Let's hit it. And welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort. All right, here we go. What you think about, you will bring about. Well, hi, everyone, and welcome back to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I hope you enjoyed the opening music. It's called Clarion Call by the Mark Arneson Band featuring Maya Dore, and you can download that on any of your favorite music platforms if you'd like. For those of you that are new, Alzheimer Speaks is about sound information, not just sound bites. Our goal is to raise all voices, big and small, around the world. And today, this is a live show, so you can call in with any questions or comments. That number is 323-870-4602, 323-870-4602. And as usual, I have to thank our listeners. I just love you to death for all your likes and clicks and shares and interest in the shows that we're doing. This week, we're actually going to be doing 3 shows. So we have one today, one tomorrow, and one on Thursday. So you're going to want to check all of those out. Tomorrow's show is going to be about COVID and pivoting in the pandemic. And then Thursday's show, we're going to be talking about the ethics of vaccines with people with dementia. And that will also be a live show on Thursday. So you might want to check that out. And today we're going to be talking about supporting the journey. But before I introduce our guest today, I always like to give a shout out to a few organizations. So Artist Away Senior Living does a memory cafe the third Wednesday of each month at 1 o'clock Central. And Arthur's Senior Care has a memory cafe on the second and the fourth Wednesday of each month at 1 o'clock Central. I happen to facilitate all 3 of those. And we welcome anybody around the world who wants to join us. Just reach out to me, and I will get you the contact information there. Or you can always visit memorycafedirectory.com. That lists all of the memory cafes in 5 different countries. There's only about 100 of them, though, that are doing virtual tours, and you can find those under Cafe Connect. Also want to shout out to Dementia Map, which is a global resource directory that myself and Dave Widrick just launched. We're really excited about that. It's easy to use. We don't ask for any upfront information. Things are available 24/7. And we have free and paid plans for those who have information that they want out with different levels of boosting exposure, etc. And let's see, 2 more. Coral Health is still allowing people to download their 2 music apps for free during the pandemic. One is Coral Faith. The other is Music First. And you just go to coralhealth.com. That's COROhealth.com. We're going to hear from the Footbar Walker, and we'll be right back.
Introducing the life-changing Footbar Walker.
I'm Peggy from Danville, Kentucky, and I'm 91 years old. The Footbar Walker revolutionized my care of George. The saving that I made from having to put him in a nursing home came to about $192,000. The Footbar Walker opens and closes just like a standard walker. The only thing that is different is the top bar and the foot bar. Does that ever make a difference?
Does someone you love use a walker? Do they struggle to get up from a seated position? Are you a caregiver dealing with physical pain and stress as you help your patient? The Footbar Walker was designed to assist not only the patient, but also the caregiver. Patients have more control standing up, and no lifting from the caregiver is required. See how it works at thefootbarwalker.com. That's thefootbarwalker.com. Peggy, would you recommend the Footbar Walker?
Do I ever? I would not be in the health that I'm in today at this age had it not been for the Footbar Walker.
Well, we're back, and I finally get to introduce you to our guest today, who I am really excited to talk to. Cloud Conrad is a dementia caregiver trainer and author, and she founded a company called New Street Compass to provide dementia caregivers the knowledge, skill, and emotional support they need to navigate their journey confidently and competently. And boy, is that a strong statement because a lot of times you get the tools, but you don't get that emotional support or you don't even know what the heck to do with your emotions on there. Cloud is actually certified in several different programs. She's certified as an independent caregiver trainer with Teepa Snow. She is an ICF certified coach. She also is a trainer with the Second Wind Dreams and Virtual Dementia Tour and the Alzheimer's Association community educator and support group facilitator. She's also certified in. She truly is an authority on solving the unique challenges that people face when they are caring for someone with dementia. She also does a lot of speaking, public speaking, and she's based in the Atlanta area. And I personally have to say I absolutely adore her book called The Dementia Field Guide. It is one of the best out there, in my opinion. Covers things so wonderfully. So welcome, Cloud. How are you doing today?
Hey, how are you, Lori? It's great to be here.
I am doing good. I'm thrilled that you were able to squeeze us into your schedule. Like I said, you sent me your book, and I was just fascinated by it, and we will talk about that a little bit more. But I always like to ask people who are my guests if they've been personally touched by dementia in their own circle of friends or family.
I have personally twice a family caregiver, first for my stepfather and then for my father. So I have that firsthand experience.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a big difference. It really changes the view of what you're experiencing, what you're seeing, how you're feeling when you've been on that emotional roller coaster and tried to find services, products, and tools as well. You know what works and what doesn't work out there. What inspired you to kind of start your dementia caregiving training practice and your company, New Street Compass?
It really started when I was caring for my father. My sisters and I experienced a lot of fear, frustration, and failure, especially in the early and middle stages of his dementia. And I vowed then there were no manuals that really would address specific situations that we were encountering. You know, there was information out there, but it was kind of heavy text, and it was so general. And what we discovered, and through our process, and what I have discovered in my research and my certifications, is that every case of dementia, Alzheimer's or dementia, is different, having to do with a multitude of factors. But this is one of the reasons why it's difficult for people who are trainers like myself to prescribe specific solutions, because each time that dementia symptoms escalate, it plays out differently for the person living with dementia and for the relationship they have with the person who is caring for them. And so I vowed that one day I would work to help other dementia caregivers navigate their journey. And that's what inspired me to start New Street Compass. I said, one day I will do this. I was still working in my marketing career at the time, but after my father passed and after I took some time, I really decided that other caregivers could benefit from what we learned and what I have learned since. And so that's what inspired me to start my company, New Street Compass.
Wonderful. So many people have had that personal journey and have chosen to step into the space and share because they don't want people going through what they went through. I know that's what got me here too. After my mom had dementia for 30 years, it was like something I'd never experienced before, and was able to get out of all the doom and gloom and come out the other side with a more even meaningful relationship and lessons learned in life and stuff, which was interesting. Now, so let's talk about your book, the Dementia Field Guide. Why did you maybe tell people how you structured it and why you structured it the way it is? because it's a spiral. You know, it's not a soft or a hard copy that we normally think of. But that just makes it so much easier to really, be able to write notes and apply things and stuff. So I love this. So why don't you talk about the book itself, what people can expect in it, and why you structured it the way you did?
Sure. First of all, the book is really kind of mirrors the way that I work with clients one-on-one and in training classes. It kind of covers a chronological order of content, if you will, that follows a caregiver's journey, beginning with, is what I'm noticing a problem, or is this normal aging? Beginning at that moment, and then helping readers identify whether or not what they're looking at is normal or not normal aging. And then if it is not normal aging, working through what happens next and how do we confront the issue, how do we plan for success, and how do we care for ourselves as caregivers in order to provide the best care that we can. You mentioned the spiral bound and the workspaces in there. I said before, Lori, that we found no specific answers. We found only very general information, and the reason for that is because dementia plays out so differently in each individual. And my goal with the book and my goal in my training, the work that I do with my clients is more of a teach the man to fish, give people the information that they need so that they can problem solve for themselves based on their own unique situation and the background and the personality and the living space and the place within dementia's progression that their own person living with dementia is. So it's structured with the spiral bound so that people can take on information via the book, the text in the book, learn how to apply that information to their own situations based on workspaces and assessments and other tools that are set up in the book. So really, it does parallel the work that I do individually and in the classes that I provide for my clients in a way that will help me reach many, many, many more people with my ideas about an orientation to caregiving and the skills that one might want to take on in order to best provide the care that they want. So it's a very experiential kind of manual. It's a manual, not really a book. There are many books, but there are a few manuals. So it's really designed for field, hands-on, boots on the ground kind of support.
You have in here, I love this one, you have the cognitive function and decline wheel that just really helps people think about, well, what is wrong and where is it? Is it sensory? Is it learning? Is it visual? Is it linguistic? You break this all down. Is it a survival thing? And I think it makes people step back and go, oh, I never really looked at breaking it down. A lot of times we identify something as an issue or as a problem, but we don't really know where it's coming from or what triggered it. And I think that can really help people set back.
Yeah,
The other thing, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say I'm so glad you brought that up because so the wheel of cognitive function is kind of a one-of-a-kind thing. I don't think your listeners will find it anywhere else. It mentions it, or it's information organized based on 8 cognitive functions in the brain. And it talks about how those functions what those functions are responsible for, how they normally change with age, but then how they can manifest if dementia is in play, how those changes become the symptoms of dementia. And it's very interesting in my own experience and in my help with others, I've noticed that there's interplay between breakdowns in different cognitive functions. And I find that the diagram is a really helpful way for me to get my clients to quickly understand and engage with information about cognitive living. And once people understand how the brain changes, it's so much easier to problem solve the situations that they're going through with their person living with dementia. When I came across that information, I felt like Helen Keller at the water pump. I mean, it was the whole key to a different way of caring for my father and a different way of helping other people care for their father or mother or spouse or sibling, or neighbor for that matter. I mean, it really, that understanding, that knowledge, and this is why I'm so glad you brought it up, the knowledge that's on the wheel of cognitive function is the building block on which all the other information that I share is based. And it really is the beginning of that teach a man to fish. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, well, and you break it down so nice in the book. You know, you talk about, you give examples of executive function from inappropriate behavior and problem solving, linguistics. A lot of times we don't really talk about that one. We talk about word loss, but we don't talk about that loss of thought kind of mid-sentence or needing more time to respond or a slower response, or, we hear about repetitive phrases. But there's many things that you break down for that whole wheel that I think people overlook and don't realize they're all kind of tied together. You also put in, which I think is great, you have a progression of peripheral vision. And I think people think a lot of times, because this is how a lot of people teach, it's like, okay, put your hands to the side and you've got wide or you've got narrow. But you have terms, as it folds in and then really gets to kind of that straight line ahead of us and you can't see anything to the sides. And I think that is really interesting too, because it starts out with the wide vision at 50 and then goes to 75 when it kind of pulls in, and then you talk snorkel and then field glass vision and then kind of peg one vision. And again, I think that those are just good things as reminders, having that visual graphic for people to be able to see. You also have what you call field assignments in here for journaling, which I think is fabulous too, in terms of, what signals are they seeing? Why don't you talk about the signals assessment a little bit in terms of, because I love that it's signals and not behavior that you're using as a term to begin with in and of itself.
It's interesting you talk about that word behavior, and if I can just talk about that a little bit before the signals. In my training, as I was retooling myself to transfer my old professional experience to being a dementia caregiver trainer and mentor, I came across the word challenging behaviors more times than I would really like. And when I was caregiving for my father, I would look around the cafeteria when we were at lunch, and I was so dismayed that that there weren't more family visitors in the cafeteria. I felt like there should be more people doing this. And there's enough fear that goes along with being a dementia caregiver, particularly in the early stages. There's enough fear to go around already. And then when people talk about challenging behaviors, they're just escalating that fear. And when we talk about, when we refer to the way a person living with dementia's disease plays out, the symptoms, the manifestations, when we think of those as behaviors, we sort of grant them the power of choice. And the person living with dementia has fewer and fewer and fewer choices available to them as their different cognitive functions decline. And so when we think of them as behaviors, we're making the assumption, or we're setting up sort of a construct where we think that the other person can do better, that the person living with dementia is choosing to act the way that they're acting, or act out, in some cases, the way that they're acting. And so I like to call them symptom-related behaviors, or simply the symptoms of dementia. It's not personality-driven. The person does not intend to aggravate us, believe it or not. Because sometimes that's hard to believe. They do not intend to aggravate us, but they are working with what is available to them still in order to communicate their needs and interact with the world around them. So the signals, sorry, I don't mean to get on a soapbox, but I think if people can stop thinking of them as behaviors and thinking of them as the signs and the symptoms of dementia, it's easier for us to display empathy and understanding and patience when we can remember that they are symptoms. We don't get angry with people with cancer, for example, when they display their symptoms. And so it's no different, really. Anyway, the signals. I'm sorry I got off on that tangent. It's really a passion point for me, and I think it's one of the distinctions of my approach to this. But so the signals of cognitive decline, they fall into 8 categories, and when we can understand what is normal aging and what is potentially a sign of dementia, then we are best equipped to know how to proceed. Ignoring the signs of dementia, even though that's the easiest thing to do, it's the least helpful of things to do. So in the book, there's an assessment that it's really 30 questions, and those 30 questions are aimed at a specific signal that relates to one of those 8 cognitive functions. And it helps my readers, it helps my clients, it can help your listeners get a clearer picture on what is normal aging and what is not normal aging. The assessment allows people to think about these 30 signals and to what extent they are or are not present in the person that they are thinking about, in their loved one, or even themselves. You can use the signals wheel and the signals assessment to help figure out if your own concerns about aging are founded or deserve more attention. The stuff like, is it normal that I can't remember how to reset the clock on my microwave? Is it normal that I can't remember why I came upstairs when I get to the top of the stairs? Is it normal that I can't remember the name of the teacher who was my child's favorite high school teacher? That sort of thing. So it helps a person get a real clear picture on if their changes are normal or not normal.
Okay. Well, and I think that makes a ton of sense. And I'm really passionate about the word behavior, and I like using the title signals, symptoms, and clues, because I really do think that they're trying to tell us something is wrong when they can't communicate in other ways. And when we look at it, like you said, this isn't a voluntary thing that they're doing. They've lost the choice to act or react in a different fashion, and it's so important. The other thing that I love that you do in the book is you talk about Maslow's hierarchy of need, and that's another big push button for me too, because I think so many people are kind of up at the top with that self-actualization, and they forget the person has skills have declined, and theirs are much more basic needs as the progression goes on. And it's really a nice, safe space to be in if we allow people to be there. So do you want to talk a little bit about that as well, and what you refer to as the emotional need, and you have a nice diagram of, on the negative side, it's uselessness, hopelessness, abandonment, terror, and distress. And on the upside, it's calm and confidence and that fellowship and happiness and drive. And, it just all depends on what do we want to make out of these different levels of his theory. And I think it's brilliant that you put this in there, because I think it's extremely important. And I don't think a lot of people understand the effect they have on others in terms of, is that emotional need going to get squashed down, and are they going to feel less than, or are we going to build them up?
Yeah. Thanks for asking about that. My mother said to me one time, they were divorced, but they stayed friends. So my mother knew my father, ongoingly through life. But she said to me one time, in her beautiful Southern accent, "Darling, logic does not apply," when I was trying to explain to her what my dad was doing, and, that it was an escalated situation and I didn't know how to get around it, and what I was doing wasn't working. Logic does not apply. With dementia, emotion, it's all about emotion. Forget reason. It's all about emotion. So let's talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Back to that, I'm glad you brought that up. I learned about that in college. I studied speech communications with an eye to go into marketing and advertising. And I never thought I would use it again, to be quite frank with you. And here it is, really a pivot point in my training. For listeners that don't know, Maslow was a behavioral scientist, I believe, doing work in the 1940s and 50s, and he, through his research, came up with a a theory called Maslow's hierarchy, what we call Maslow's hierarchy of need. And basically he said that all of us are bound by, that's my word, bound by, but we all share 5 universal needs. Other behavioral scientists have decided maybe there's more than 5, but everyone seems to agree on these 5. So they are, and he says that they're in a hierarchy, that there's an order in which they must be fulfilled, that there are physical needs, and like, food, shelter, warmth. There are safety needs. Then there is a need to feel as one is loved and belongs. There is a need for self-esteem and to be valued by others. And then highest on this hierarchy is the need for self-actualization, or an easier way to say that is personal motivation or sense of purpose or drive. Mm-hmm. We all share these needs. People living with dementia and caregivers alike, these needs do not recede with age. They do not recede with dementia. And as a person, with dementia becomes less and less capable of fulfilling their needs themselves, then they become more vulnerable, less independent, and they eventually develop, sort of an elevated state of anxiety, because they're aware that they have these needs and yet they are not able to fulfill them themselves. They have the will to fulfill the need, but they don't have the power and the ability. They don't have the mastery to be able to fulfill that need. Mm-hmm. One of the expression, Laura, you talked a minute ago about linguistic skills and word loss and losing one's train of thought mid-sentence. So a person has needs that don't go away, and yet they are losing their ability to fulfill them themselves. Simultaneously, they're losing the ability to express what they need to others. And so, they're drawing on whatever, as we said before, whatever they have left in order to try to communicate their need to others. And this is when those communications break down, and they so commonly do. Because we, as the caregivers, once we're seasoned, we know better, but as the caregivers, we're expecting a reasonable response, a rational conversation, and the person in our care can't provide that. A stranger, total stranger, at the cafeteria where my father was staying one time, she was behind me in line in the cafeteria, and she said to me that people living with dementia are manipulative. And I kept my mouth shut. And I thought, this is exactly why we need a manual, because they're not. But it's so easy to draw that conclusion without understanding that the needs remain and the ability to fulfill them gets lost. And that's what creates these difficult scenarios and escalated situations between caregiver and person living with dementia. Mm-hmm. And back to the. Go ahead.
Go ahead. That's okay. Go ahead.
Back to symptom-related behavior, and the symptoms of dementia. When a person living with cancer, they have less of an ability to fulfill their needs when they are when they are battling cancer and in the throes of their rigorous treatments. But yet, the relationship doesn't change in the same way that it does in dementia. And it has to do with that. It has to do with that piece of ration and reasoning. And with dementia, we can't really write the relationships with reason anymore. And I think that's one thing that makes caregiving so challenging. So remembering about the needs that we share, I think helps. I've noticed with my clients, it helps them, develop that empathy muscle that makes everything so much easier.
Yeah. You have written in here, and I love this one too, you have such great advice for families and how for them to kind of journal and pull more details out of their thoughts. Because I think it's really easy as a family member or anyone caring for someone with dementia to kind of just get looped into, what isn't working. And we don't always ask ourselves what is working, or how did that change? Break it down to be able to find some answers. And you do a really nice job in terms of helping people map out things. And one of the statements you have in here is, denial is controlled by the owner. Emotionally charged viewpoints take time to evolve and each at their own pace. And I think especially when families are involved, I know for myself, I wanted my brothers to be like me. I wanted them to be on the same page and pace as I was in that role. And I tried to force it, and I got really, really frustrated with it. And they got frustrated with it. You know, they saw me as a control freak. I saw myself as organized. And you know, it took us a while to have the conversation of why we both had those opinions. And I think both were true, you know, with it. But you see what you want to see and what you need to see for you to feel comfortable in your whole kind of Maslow's theory and stuff. And so I think denial is really important because it is such a masterful piece that comes into play for people, not just family members, but people with dementia as well. You also have in here some changes in language that can help people. Instead of saying, hey, let's go get you diagnosed, it's like, you know, let's get things checked out. It's just much softer, but you're moving in the same direction. But you might not get much pushback. And those are really subtle changes with such power behind them.
Well, and go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, that's all right. That's all right. Go ahead.
The truth is that when these signals appear, they could be symptoms of something else. Even though the family member, the spouse, whomever, may be sure that dementia is in play, to be fair, no one really knows that until some diagnostics are underway. Depression, you know, is a very common scenario where dementia and depression share some symptoms. Thyroid problems. There's other medical conditions that can also produce some of these signals of cognitive decline. And so, to be fair, caregivers can leverage that notion that, you know, we don't know what it is. It could be a number of things. Let's go have a conversation. It's an easy out, you know, for caregivers.
It is, and it's so funny because people with dementia say that all the time. Oh, the first thing they blame is the dementia, you know, and then they say, well, this has always been my personality, you know, and I could say the same about you, but I'm not, you know. So, but it is easy to blame the disease, and sometimes that's appropriate, and sometimes it's not. And you've got some really good questions in here to guide people. You know, what have I noticed? Here's what I've noticed, and then I'm concerned about, and this is why. And I think these are great questions, not only for an individual, but to share with family and friends and with the doctors. And then what's going on here? What might this be? You know, again, it's just a little softer approach versus, you know, this has to be fixed immediately, and the pressure is put on. A lot of times we put that pressure on somebody else, not ourselves, to fix it. And it just slows the conversation down, and I think it invites other people in to have their opinions and what they're seeing, because we have to look at this from all different sides, because sometimes we're the problem. Sometimes it's us that's raising the hair on somebody's back, and we don't see it because we're standing in front of them. We're really making them feel uncomfortable.
Right. It's interesting you say that, because you know, dementia is such a daunting topic that we want to make it urgent. And I can think of very few emergencies that are dementia related. I mean, if you have firearms in the house, or if your loved one with dementia is raising a knife, that's an emergency. But other than that, there's very few emergencies with dementia. So while it is a huge and very important topic, we do have the latitude to ease into it with not encouraging denial, but to allow people, back to what you were reading before, that quote from before about denial being the owners, letting people come, giving them the space to come to the middle, to the truth, I guess, in the middle. And to your point too, there are truth on both sides of things. So coming to the middle, I guess, is really a good way to say that. We have to give people the space to do it. One of the examples I give in the book is that, and this is something I encountered early on, the family strife that really surfaces when denial is present, in dementia. And so one of my early clients was, she was of the belief that dementia was present, and her 4 siblings who never got along anyway believed otherwise. And so she was Xeroxing articles and saying, see, I told you, kind of stuff, and mailing that off to her siblings. And, with no positive movement from that campaign. And so, we need to give people their time. We can allow them, present them the facts, and let them digest and accept on their own terms. It's hard to do. It's easier to say than to do.
Yeah, well, and we try to control our kids and protect them from making mistakes, and yet that's part of life is learning to kind of walk through the forest and be safe and learn the lessons instead of someone just protecting you throughout the way. And or someone who has an addiction problem, we all know you can't force them to want treatment. They have to be ready for it. Same with denial and coming out of it. Somebody has to really be ready, for another path and be willing to say, okay, I have to look at something a little bit different. Maybe it isn't what I thought it was. And too often, when it comes to caring for somebody, those opinions don't change until there's a crisis, until there's something undeniable that happens, and then they're like, oh, okay, I guess this might be a little bit different than what I wanted to.
Isn't that human nature anyway? We're not really moved to make changes until there's discomfort beyond what we're willing to tolerate, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah. You also have a real nice section in the book on self-care for the caregivers, and this is talked about all the time. Care partners, care companions, carers, caregivers, want to know, how do I do that? And, everybody rattles off a big list, but you kind of come from a philosophical side that is out there in many different angles, with the physical, the environmental, cognitive, social, spiritual, and then, what do you value? And seeing where you sit on this. But then you break it down. You really just have such a nice job in terms of how you break things down on, what specific thing are you talking about, and what is your intention maybe to change that so that you can be more in balance, and then taking it a step farther and go, okay, that's your intention, but really, what are you going to do about it? Give me a couple of steps here. For people to really be able to watch this. I can't believe, we're 40 minutes into the show already, and I have I'm not even halfway through the talking points in Cloud's book. I mean, it is just filled with wonderful, wonderful information, and trust me, I see a lot of books out there. This one is, I believe it's just fabulous. If you truly want to have a deep insight. Another section in the book, you talk about the human need and different fulfillment models, which I think is really interesting too, because I'm a big believer as well that we have to feel purposeful and we have to feel like we belong. And when we lose that, that's really when a lot of the depression and other reactions, behaviors, whatever you want to call them, become more pronounced. And you start seeing significant changes when people feel so disconnected.
So disconnected. And go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, if you want to talk a little bit more about kind of mastering the needs for I can't say for filling the needs for the fulfillment model. I can't say that word. Yeah. Thank you.
This is an interesting scenario. So what we all have these needs, and what is different about our behavior model, yours and mine, and listeners, is that we have, in addition to the will, it's not enough to have the will to make a change. We were talking about making changes and denial and everything a minute ago. Not denial related now, but it's not enough just to have the will to make a change when we arrive at that moment of discomfort that is greater than our tolerance for discomfort. We have the will to make that change. We also need the ability to do the things necessary to make that change, and we need the power, we need the agency, we need the authority to make that change in order to increase our comfort level or improve our well-being, I suppose, in the case of these human needs. And yet the person with dementia, so they have their needs too. They arrive at the place of discomfort that is greater than their tolerance for that discomfort, and they want to make a change. They have the will to make that change, but now they don't have the power and the ability to make that change any longer. And so that creates a great deal of frustration. It creates an elevated sense of anxiety, as our most basic needs are physical comfort and safety. We are always in a mode, as creatures living on this planet, we were always in a mode of self-preservation. It was more dire in the caveman days, but we were all still in this mode of self-preservation. And so it's our ability to detect the world around if we have dementia. I have this bad habit of talking about we as if we all have dementia. If we had dementia, our ability to interpret the world around us visually, audibly, tactilely, emotionally, with cognitive thinking, abstract thinking, our ability to process the world around us and respond to it becomes diminished in dementia. And so we have the will still at full throttle, just like caregivers do, but we don't have that power and ability any longer. And when we talk about you wanted me to talk about this in the context of feeling like we belong and having purpose. Let me talk about solving the right problem. Let's say that someone is pacing around. They're pacing around, and we don't know why they're pacing, and it's really irritating to us. And we can't get them to sit still and eat their lunch or take the nap or shave or, whatever it is. That pacing is an expression of an unmet need. In the case of pacing, it's not always true. There might be other causes for pacing. But when we talk about will and power and ability, that pacing may be the expression of a need to be useful. I have the person saying, I have energy, I just don't know how to use it. Now, they can't articulate those words. And, many situations are different. But oftentimes pacing can be resolved if we shift the energy to something that allows the person living with dementia to experience some of those higher order needs, some of those emotionally based needs like belonging. So the person's indicating they have the energy. Perhaps we can help them find something to do that will use that energy in a way that allows them to feel like they're contributing to daily life, contributing to the community or the family around them. And so is pacing a problem? No. But wouldn't it be so much better if the person could also feel engaged? So when we think about what things people might feel useful doing, it's helpful if we look to their past. When they were in their cognitive peak, what was their identity? What were their hobbies? What were their interests? What were the life skills that they were using at work? What are the professional skills they were using at work? And how might we dial those back so that an activity could be tailored to their needs, but allows them to utilize that part of their identity to contribute? An example. This one is from the talks that I do at the Alzheimer's Association. This is not an original example, but I'm sure that people can relate to it nonetheless. There, in one of the talks that I give there, it talks about one of the solutions to rummaging was to allow the mother, who had been a homemaker for 40 years with 6 children, I think, to participate in activities that recalled her homemaking role when she was in charge of the laundry, when she was in charge of the dishes, and that sort of thing. And so even though you and I might not feel that folding towels for an extended period of time was a meaningful, engaging activity, we might feel that was demeaning to be folding towels over and over. But for this particular caregiver's mother, it gave her a sense of her old identity when she was at her cognitive peak, and it gave her a sense that I'm using what I know and my skills to make a difference in this household. Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about mastery and will and power and ability, we, if we can think about ways to allow power and ability to support will. And so like in the middle stages where caregivers are having that difficult time trying to figure out, should I do it for my person or should I let them try to figure it out on their own? Example mm-hmm. being loss of words, and this is really a conversation that caregivers can have with their person in dementia. Do you want me to help you find the word, or do you want to work on it some more? To allow them that ability to exercise their will to the ability that they can. I hope that mm-hmm. makes sense.
Yep. No, it does. You also break down, which I think is wonderful because everybody thinks words are so important, that our verbal communication is really only 7%. Vocal is 38% and visual is 55%. So when you look at that nonverbal communication, it's just a huge piece. Or the tone of our voice makes a big difference in terms of how people react and feel. And sometimes we don't even know that we are acting or displaying maybe an inappropriate behavior towards somebody because we're in denial. We're thinking, hey, I got my Stepford wife smile on. I'm doing okay. No one knows I'm mad or angry or anxious, but the other people are feeling it. And that goes for people with dementia and, who are cognitively fine as well. And we've all experienced those times where someone's walked into a room and everything has just changed. No one said a word. No one really knows why. It's just everybody is walking on eggshells and is on edge. And so it is easy to always blame it on dementia, but sometimes we have to look within, I think many times. You also put in the book, you have common factors for escalation. So physical needs like hunger and thirst or constipation or being tired or pain, environmental, which I think is overlooked so much, the lighting, the temperature, the noise levels, the amount of stimulation, touch that's happening, and then that emotional piece from anger and fear and sorrow and frustration or lack of purpose. So you have packed so much into this book. And, it's a really easy resource book as well in terms of you can just kind of flip through and put little stickies on there for what it is you're looking for, which I find really helpful. And having it be a spiral, I think, was just a really wise move in how you've laid this out and how it can be utilized, by others. With that, I think is really very smart too. You also towards the back, you have information for people, for caregivers, again, for self-care and well-being assessment. And you kind of break some things down by those topics that we talked about earlier, from visual and social, spirituality, and things, and then kind of let them score things out on where they land. So they're not like, okay, I filled it out, now what do I do? But you have taken a really nice, I think, holistic approach. In terms of holistic, I'm talking, looking at the whole person, not just the person with dementia, but also those caring for them on both sides of the fence. And sometimes we just direct things one way, but we are so much more alike than we are different. And when we just slow down and are able to process things, it makes life much better for everyone. When you wrote the book, and I know it's fairly new being out, what were you hoping for a response, and what kind of response have you been getting from people?
Well, really, when I wrote the book, the intent was so that I could reach more people with my ideas, and in order to help them problem solve. I hope that the response or the result of reading the book would be that people would learn how to problem solve their own situations based on the knowledge and skill and emotional support that's in the book, so that they would be able to move forward confidently and also move forward confidently, even if they weren't sure what they were about to try was going to work, that they could move forward in addition to with confidence, with curiosity, to try something new, to come back and re-engage rather than to, recede and to go away and to visit less or try less. That was my hope. The response that I've gotten so far is I just was on a coaching call this morning, and my client said, I can't tell you how many times I thought about you and your book over the holidays. Her husband is in the early stages of dementia, and she had 19 people coming to visit over the course of 3 weeks, and she was really worried about him and how she was going to handle him and all of that. And she said, I referred to your book so many times, and I was able to think things through on my own. I got to where I could think things through on my own, so I didn't have to grab the book and look something up. And that was beautiful to me. And that's exactly, when I say teach a man to fish, that's exactly what I want for people to say, okay, X and Y, and therefore maybe Z. Let's try Z, That's what I hope for. And that's the early feedback that I'm getting about it.
Wonderful. It looks like we have a caller on the line, so let me pull them in. I'm thinking that they're calling through a computer because it's just coming up as a 111 number. So let me see.
Okay.
Let's see. We've got a caller on the line. Do you want to state your name and why you're calling?
Yeah, hi. I'm off-grid 2021. I just came in. I just saw your show, and it's very timely. I did have a question. And I don't know if it's in your book or not, but I wanted to get some information about patient or the client who is married and the other person is either incapable or unwilling to take part in what is turning out to be clearly a situation that's going to require more care in the long run. Without going into a lot of detail, I have a cousin in California, and they're both over there by themselves, basically. There's no family or anything over there. It's just her and her husband. But she's picking up signs, and she's recognizing that she's dealing with early stages of memory loss. She's afraid to go in and get a checkup. She's afraid to test because she's afraid that once if she finds out that it is in fact something more serious, she's going to then be plagued with the issue of how to take care of it and who's going to help her. And unfortunately, they don't listen to this, so I can say that her husband is not going to be a helpmate in this. I mean, it is just obvious. It's not a question of trying to talk to him. It's not a question of trying to sit him down and recognize what's happening. Everything about him, and at first I thought she was exaggerating, but I got a chance to see it for myself and measure it against who he has been with her. And they've been together for a long time, and that's what's really kind of scary, is that not only I want to make sure I get this right, not only are his actions now showing someone incapable of dealing with a serious event. But based on the conversation I've had with her about the years that they've been married, he has never been that pillar. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
So go ahead. We've got about 5 minutes. So.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
No,
that's okay.
Fine. I'm glad you called in. Is he in denial or just unwilling to provide the care?
That it's really, you know what? I don't know. I've been trying to figure it out myself because in so many ways, he seems like such a great person. But whenever it becomes, like I said, you can tell now that whatever's going on is clearly a pattern that on some level she must have enabled, because it seems to be okay for him to be the guy who doesn't take care of her or doesn't do his share or something. It's like he either freezes or he doesn't want to put in the effort, or I don't know. It's bugging me. My major concern now is that they're both over there. There's no other family there, and I guess for me, I'm trying to figure out whether I need to take some steps in the event that it does get worse, okay, or get to the point where, you know what I mean?
Right. So do you know when her next annual? Probably yes. You should get involved on some level. I'm saying this with very little knowledge, but that would be my inclination. Do you know when her next annual wellness checkup is?
No, I don't. And like I said, that was the first thing I kept telling her. I said, you just can't afford to not find out at this point. Okay, I was very blunt. I said, you don't want to find yourself driving down the street one of these days and realizing you're lost. Okay, I said you need to, if nothing else, get the exam so that if it is a problem, you can then talk to the doctor about support groups or something, that you can fall back on.
Yeah, and a diagnosis would, if she were to have a test that way and come up with the likely diagnosis, then that would invite the opportunity perhaps for a social worker to get involved, and that might help be your boots on the ground if this is a long distance scenario.
So a social worker can and would get involved in something like this. Would human service? What is it? Human Health Services? They would get involved in something like this.
I don't know state by state, but if there was a diagnosis, that would help open that door for sure.
Awesome.
Without a diagnosis, it would be hard to open that door.
I like that.
Yeah, many clinics do have a social worker on staff or someone who can help refer them, kind of get them into the system if that's what's needed. A lot of times I think people think, well, I can't have a social worker unless I don't have any money. Then that's when somebody would step in, and then, no, I'm not going to be in control of my decisions. There's also care managers out there that can be hired. And it may, it might, like you said, it might just be him as a person. He's never stepped up. This is not who he is, wants to be. I've seen a lot of people like that. Over time, where they have always been cared for by the other person, and so they're not going to accept this as a diagnosis because it's going to turn their world around. And so it does get very, very interesting. But we do need to wrap up. But I do appreciate you calling in, and I want to make sure that we get Cloud's contact information out there. You can visit her at newstreetcompass.com. newstreetcompass.com or Cloud at newstreetcompass.com. And you can purchase her book through her website there as well. And then do you want to give out a phone number or not? Or do you prefer electronic?
No, a phone number is fine. The 678-517-4225 is the phone number to call. And then can I get my email too?
Yes.
A lot of times people just want to kind of type for a while before they actually, reach out. So my email is cloud, CLOUD, like up in the sky, at newstreetcompass.com. NEWSTREET, compass.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. And as for me, you can always reach me at alzheimerspeaks.com. We'll talk soon. Bye now, everyone.
Thank you so much, Lori. It's been a privilege and a pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hey everybody, Jared Sebestier, host of Retire Repurposed. This podcast is dedicated to help people transition into fulfilling and purposeful retirements. Retirement is a big life change. In fact, the two most dangerous years of a person's life are the year they were born and the year they retire. Few people could just flip the switch from working a career 30 or 40 plus years, retiring on Friday, without methodical steps to living what we call a repurposed retirement. To listen now, search Retire Repurposed on your favorite podcast platform, Senior Resource, or Life Audio.